One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays.
With Dave and myself.
Actually, with Marla and Dave, and that would be Marla, and I would be Dave.
I thought that was just a quicker way to get to it, like Dave and myself. But I guess I should say.
But you know what? You got to say, welcome to Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
You know, I just have to look at our guests and just with a plea of, he's always telling me what to do, Kacey. No. Anyway.
We want to remind you guys, we want to remind you to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 and support our $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign. Last year, we actually did pretty good with that. We want to actually do even better this year. So we're trying to start early, and we're going to keep it going until we can erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. Our guest today is Kacey Short. She is a walking testimony of triumph. Like many others, she has struggled with mental illness, or like we like to say around here, brain difference, but didn't let that stop her from not only reaching her goals in life, but also continuing to learn new strategies to enhance her self-awareness and strive for mental wellness. Strap in, because we are going to have a super fun, informative, just a great conversation with Kacey. We will be right back.
Don't move.
When Dave and Marla get together.
Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 to donate. $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
Well, we never disappoint, and as we promised, if you could just stay put, we have an amazing show for you today, and we told you to strap in, and we want to welcome our guest, Kacey Short, to Mental Health Mondays.
Hello.
Kacey, did we over-sensationalize your journey? Because we're super excited to talk to you. So is it okay for us to strap in?
Absolutely. I'm very excited to be here to talk about it.
Well, we did not know how, they say the world is... Every relationship, everybody in the world is separated by about 6 degrees of separation, and we didn't know it was really just 1 degree.
And wait a minute, I was going to say, when it comes to mental health, it changes degrees. They say in the black community it's 3 degrees because it's smaller, and now in the mental health community, mental health Mondays, it's 1 degree.
Yep.
We're really closely connected.
Yes, we are.
Absolutely. So, Kacey, why don't you first of all describe the connection that we're talking about right now?
So my wonderful spouse, William Sterling, was on the show a couple months back with his podcast partner, his co-host, Craig Smith.
And they are a very, not just informative, but entertaining duo.
Very, very entertaining. Yeah.
I can only imagine around the house. But let's go all the way back. One of the things that you talked about as I was reading your early childhood description of in the family, you were the problem child. Yes. And I can remember sometimes feeling like that's the way my dad felt about me. And it seemed like a thing. You know what I mean? It took me a long time to kind of get over that stigma almost. Did you have to deal with any of that growing up?
Absolutely. Yeah. I always had big emotions and was prone to tantrums, as opposed to my brother was always very calm. Like he was described as like a Buddha as a baby.
Was it just the two of you?
Just the two of us. Okay. Yeah. And so even as a baby, I was just the opposite of him. And growing up and not really understanding my big emotions, having tantrums, being the loud one, the one demanding a lot of attention because of that, definitely internalized a lot of shame. Just not understanding why who I was so wrong.
Yeah.
And not understanding what I had to do to change that.
Right.
Especially at such a young age.
Yeah, so was it your parents that realized that maybe there's some brain differences going on here that we need to address, or did that happen later on in life sort of on your own?
I think it was known. It wasn't really talked about.
Was it dealt with?
Not really. I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that's because there wasn't a care or desire,
Right.
just a lack of tools
Yeah.
and a lack of comfortability
Like
with
most
talking.
families these days.
Yeah, talking about difficult things. So when I was 16, I actually went to my father. I was in my first really deep depression and pretty suicidal and had an eating disorder. And it got to the point, and I was self-harming. I self-harmed pretty bad in my early teens. I got to the point where I went to him and I was like, I think I need help. So can I go talk to somebody?
Now, was that kind of due to trauma that also came from the fact that you lost your mom kind of at a very young age as well?
Yeah, that definitely exacerbated it. It all existed prior to that, but that obviously
Those
just
are trigger points.
accelerated
Yeah.
it, made it a lot worse.
My question is, because these actually recognize these things and then look back in retrospect, how early did you, Kacey, realize?
Age of 5 or 6.
So was there like a key moment, or just is that only a look back that goes, you know what, at 5 I remember?
Yeah, sitting on my own and just looking at the other kids and being like, why am I like this? I don't feel like them. I feel different. And my journal entries, I journaled a lot growing up. They're like, I will go back to them. They're your memory in my mind being on the playground.
Of your
being
first questioning of yourself.
Yes.
So
Wow.
now you asked your dad to kind of help you get a therapist, and out of that therapy you had
Different ones before I found what worked. Major depressive disorder, generalized panic disorder, and then at 27 it was cyclothymia.
To mental health because of our two children, middle and oldest. And I have not heard of cyclothymia.
Yes.
Can you please expound?
Yes, I hadn't heard of it until I had that conversation with my psychiatrist and my therapist. So it is a rare form of bipolar episodes, but I don't have manic episodes. They're
okay.
hypomanic.
Oh, wow.
So they're mild manic episodes. And what's different is that my cycles are rapid. So it's extreme mood shifts, extremely cycles where I'm experiencing hypomania and hyperdepression at the same time, which is very confusing.
have a mixed
help us.
episode.
Well, hold on. Hearing you,
Absolutely.
just say, you know what, I'd rather not, and we're good, because I know that can happen. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm pretty much an open book now,
Awesome.
Okay.
which is good.
Okay.
But so the mixed cycles in the RAS beam, so it's only 4 inches. And then some days I wake up and I'm on a tightrope, and I'm only have a tightrope to get from point A to point B, and it's very confusing and it's very scary. And these episodes, you don't see that for cyclothemic episodes, there aren't main triggers where you can prepare for something like that. So it's difficult and it's confusing, and sometimes I don't even realize it until I'm out of the episode, and I can look back and be like, oh my gosh, the past 3 days, that's why I was dealing with this thing in this way. It's, even though I've been lucky enough to have been in therapy since I was 16 and know all the signs and have the tools, when you're in it, it's just sometimes you're blind to it.
So why don't talk to us about the difference between what people would be diagnosed with, say, depression or depressive disorder, and all the way to a major depressive disorder. What would be the difference there, if you can speak on that?
Well, I am not a doctor, so I can only speak to how it was described to me.
Exactly.
The major depressive disorder is just constant depression. It's not an episode. It
doesn't let
my
up.
baseline, like if this is a normal, air quotes normal, or baseline, mine is down here, and I will maybe go up and down, but never at the surface level where I guess we're supposed to strive to be.
Right. Okay. I appreciate that. So, and the reason why we started off saying that your story was a story of triumph, because when I hear the things that you've been dealing with, we don't usually hear that people decide to study abroad,
Right.
or they graduate from Harvard like you did, and so it seems like you're.
Or we don't usually find people that also have amazing nails. Can you please just? Because I'm a nail fanatic and I'm fixed on her nails. I'm like, she gets it.
So, in other words, those things seem there's a sort of irony built in there. So, explain how, and that says to me that you've not just early on, but you continue to strive to have that regime that protects your mental wellness. Am I on the right track there?
Yeah, despite all of this, I've somehow always been a very high achiever. I think that is how I cover and mask and feel air quotes normal. My productivity, my levels of productivity are really wrapped up in my self-worth, which I've learned through years of therapy. But it's a coping mechanism. It's one coping mechanism that it can be borderline unhealthy, but it's one of the healthier coping mechanisms.
Right.
That I learned.
Right. It just works out that way. That's pretty good.
Like on my good days, on my hypomanic days, I get ahead of things. Do 10 hours of work in 6 hours. So when the bad day comes, I don't fall too far behind.
Well, I can't let this before we go. We'll be right back. We're going to a break, but not before I repeat that William Sterling says, "Tell Kacey I love her." Okay. Okay, I just told her. There you go. We'll be right back. Don't move. More with Kacey when we come back.
Absolutely.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
Also called affective disorders, mood disorders may involve feeling sad all the time or losing interest in important parts of life, fluctuating between extreme happiness and extreme sadness.
Other symptoms may be irritability, changes in appetite or weight, changes in sleep patterns, difficulty concentrating.
The most common mood disorders are depression, bipolar disorder, seasonal affective disorder, or self-harm. An estimated 21.4% of U.S. adults experience any mood disorder at some time or some point in their lives.
If you or anyone that you know are experiencing any of these symptoms, distorted moods, or emotional states, please seek professional help. Life can actually get better.
This message is brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
David is a thinker.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically wear my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
Okay, like we said, we're back. And so, Kacey, number one, I'm always super appreciative of just your transparency, but also your ability to be able to come on and share, because it does truly, truly help to break down the stigma and frees a lot of people, because so many people are going through so much, and a lot of the times they either are not given permission or don't have the information or the circle or the community that will allow them to discover something that can help them actually find solutions to balance. So we always are very grateful for that, especially coming from personal experience.
Absolutely. And I would say I would just turn right quick before we continue with the rest of your story. Let's start from this point. Now, especially at a day and age in this political environment where women's issues are pretty much at the forefront, depending on either side of the political spectrum that you fall on. But you had come to a point where you felt like maybe long-term serious relationships might not be an option for you. Explain that, especially at this point in time where other young ladies might be having similar feelings.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't for lack of trying.
Yeah.
I was in a pretty unhealthy relationship on and off for 11 years. So after getting out of that, I was pretty much like, I just need to rely on myself. honestly, getting through the day and dealing with my own moods and managing myself is incredibly difficult, let alone properly supporting a partner in the way that I would want to and hope to.
Right.
So at a certain point, I was like, because I always knew I didn't want children, so marriage wasn't necessarily a milestone. I was like, oh, by 30, I want to do this, or by 35, I want to have kids. For me, it was more just get through the day.
Okay, wait.
That was
Can I
my
ask you?
priority.
Can I just stop you right there?
Yeah.
So that's the clearest that I've heard that spoken. And was that choice that you were making based on your mental health journey, the choice not to have children? Because you're just clear. It just went right through that. I had to.
I think later on, I made that decision in my teens. Or it wasn't a decision, it was just a realization. And I remember telling my family, and they were always like, you're so young, you haven't met the right person, all these
I said those things, that's why I'm asking, except I have 3. Help me.
And you know what? I did meet the right person. I have an amazing spouse, you know, and it doesn't change the fact that I don't think kids are for me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say never, but it's not an intentional part of my plan.
I got it. So carry on. I burst in there with a whole nother thought.
Well, yeah, so I was like, I had peers, and I see a lot of people, and the media kind of perpetuates this as well, that women's worth is kind of wrapped up in your relationship status, your family status, all of these different things, and I just never identified with any of that. And so I was like, I'm not necessarily looking for marriage. I know I don't want kids. My goal, the best case scenario is just to find a good partner that I can also be a good partner to. And when I met William, I was not in that place. I told him on our first date, I was like, I'm leaving the country in a couple months. I don't want kids.
Said the country. By the way, I'm going way over there, not even here in the United States anywhere.
Yeah, and he was on the same page. He was like, great, I just got out of a thing like a couple years ago. I'm not looking for anything serious, and it just immediately was different.
Now,
and it
was that,
changed.
and I wanted to pull a Marla right quick and kind of pause right there. Was that almost a freeing kind of understanding? Because, you know, instead of going through, sometimes people go through the normal dating routine where you got this facade that you're faking it. You guys seem like right off the bat, hey, this is what it is. Take it or leave it. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not sorry, but it is what it is. Deal with it.
Sorry, not sorry.
And then he sounded like, yeah, me too. And you were like, oh, great. We can just be ourselves.
Were one of the two of you faking it?
No.
You both meant it. I know you meant it because I can tell that she meant it. William, I know you're watching. Were you faking it? I'm just not for real. You can come back on and answer that question another time.
And matter of fact, we had to cancel one time.
We were going to have them back on, yeah.
Anyway, and we will get back to Craig and Will because you guys are hilarious, and you will be back. Anyway, but so continue with your as things progressed.
Well, you know,
how did it turn from we don't want anything?
Yeah,
we don't want anything serious to suddenly now you're married?
Well, we got to know each other, and that's what changed.
From different countries?
No, I didn't end up going to grad school abroad.
Okay.
Yeah, that was for grad school. COVID happened, so I didn't end up leaving the country.
Was it for grad school or just to get William off your back? You know what? I'm going out of the country. And in reality, I'm going to be at Ralph's. I'll see you soon.
At the Rock and Roll Ralph's down by Runyon Canyon. Yeah.
I love it.
So you didn't go, and you guys stayed in. You kept.
Our first date lasted 7 hours. We closed the bar. We were just sitting talking. Our second date lasted 8 hours. Yeah, our third date lasted like 24 hours. We just talked. And we bonded over a lot. He lost his mom to cancer at a young age. I lost my mom to cancer at a young age. We both feel that therapy changed our lives, saved our lives. So I think our transparency and willingness to be ourselves came out of therapy. And that was something that was incredibly attractive to me because I hadn't found that in other people in the same level that I found with William. He's incredibly emotionally intelligent and he's incredibly funny. How we talked about and all of this helps.
I love what you just said, and I want you guys to hear her one more time. I just want you, Kacey, to look in your camera and use that phrase, emotional intelligence. Seriously, because that's something that people don't even...
That's true.
It's huge.
Yes, he's incredibly emotionally intelligent, and he works on that. That's not necessarily something that we're born understanding. Right. It takes a lot of work and a lot of reading and a lot of work on yourself and therapy to get to that point. And he puts in the work the same way that I would like to think that I put in the work. And I think that's part of the reason why it's so good.
So that brings me to another point. Why don't you talk to us about your mental wellness regime? Because, it seems like if we didn't have this conversation for the last 20 plus minutes, I would never subscribe to you or think that you were dealing with the issues that you are dealing with.
At all.
Which pretty much says to me that however you're dealing with it, seems to be you're dealing with it pretty well.
Well, thank you. I will say I'm actually in the midst of a depressive episode right now. William was comforting me all day. So it's partially just learning to cover and learning what you need to do to fulfill your responsibilities and your commitments. But prioritizing sleep. I attempted suicide and thankfully, did not succeed when I was 23. And that I had to completely change my lifestyle at that point. Prioritize sleep, prioritize working out, prioritize eating better. But sleep, honestly, I know I said earlier, there aren't always triggers for this, but a lack of sleep or poor sleep is one main trigger for me. And I sleep a lot, like a lot. I have some chronic pain stuff. It's very common for me to sleep 12 hours if I can. So part of it is not wanting to feel, and that's how my body is able to
just
let
shut
go.
Down. Yeah.
Another part of it is the chronic pain that I have endometriosis, so there's that, but also the chronic pain that accompanies a lot of mental illness. It manifests that way in your body.
Yeah.
And also I'm just generally very tired, I think, from covering. It takes a lot of work to do that. And so by the end of the day, I'd rather go to sleep early than go out a lot.
One therapist actually described depression to us on the show as not really people thinking that you're always sad, but it's like if you think this is the life energy that should be,
it's a physical
the baseline,
depressed life
it's
force.
Suddenly your energy is just down, and you couldn't actually
physical.
pick it up if you wanted to, because ground zero for you is a lot lower than it is for most of us. And again, we give you a lot of credit for the way that you have not only handled it, but again, if you didn't tell us this transparently, we would not have ever been. We wouldn't have known.
William, okay, he said you can't fake love. Guess what? Well, we love her too now. Now what are you going to do? She's with us. She's not with you, and we are here, okay?
Our guest
Don't
is
move.
Kacey Short, and she is not only amazing, but we can't wait to talk to her on the other side of this next break. We'll be right back. All right, lovebirds. Marla, what was the poll question? First of all, you're not dancing. There you go. And
I
I'm
can
not
only do
being
so much in the seat.
I'm not being exploitative, but
Yes, you are.
hey.
You're always exploiting me. You exploit me every Monday when that dancing music comes on.
I just like to see you dance, sweetie.
Yeah,
Anyway, Marla, what was the poll question last week?
Last week's poll question, which we're going to ask Kacey, we asked the question, what is the number of U.S. adults living with PTSD? Was it 5 million, 12 million, or 18 million? Throw a number out there.
18 million?
Wah, 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 wah.
But it's okay. You know what?
Got another chance. Actually, the
you know
answer is
what?
12 million.
Failure is the key to success.
And wait a minute. I'm not sure that this statistic didn't come before COVID. So it might actually even be higher than 18 after the pandemic. So the poll question for next week, Kacey, here's your second chance. What percentage of Americans live with a serious mental illness such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or a major depression? Is it 1%, 4%, or 7%?
Oh boy, 4%?
Okay, now this
That's
time,
a great guess.
that is an amazing guess, but we can't tell
give
you
the
if you're
answer
right or wrong.
Till next week.
Gonna have to tune in to the show next week and see if Kacey got it correct. I have a good feeling. Anyway, I want you guys to remember to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021. $1 today keeps the stigma away. We'll be right back. And
All
that
right.
quick, we're back.
And Passionate One here in the chat room also says, interesting word, covering. I have to admit, I haven't heard that myself.
Yeah,
It's a good one.
So, Kacey, now a question that we get from time to time when someone, you mentioned what we call the titration process that you know all about. When you first get diagnosed with something, you might be they might give you a therapy of a certain medication. It might work. It might not work. It might work a little too well. You might need to adjust the medication, but you found the right medication for you. And we call that the titration process. Do you still find that you have to adjust your medications as you continue to maybe get used to it, or maybe things change a little bit for you, your situations?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually just switched my medications a couple months ago and increased the dosage 2 weeks ago. So even though I had found a combination that worked very well for years, I plateaued on it. And so working with my doctor to switch over to a different one, got that baseline in my system. We recently increased it. I think it's always a work in progress.
So now, speaking of that, how do you find the ability to trust your care team? You know, not just Will, but your therapist, your psychiatrist. How do you find that? Because a lot of people, that's really the sticking point. You know what I mean?
And I 100% understand that. I have had some very negative interactions or experiences, and I've been over-medicated by a doctor and went through a withdrawal process and resulted in some hallucinations. Like I've had really poor experiences, but I knew I couldn't give up. You know, if you find a doctor and it's not working, you just got to try and find another one and keep doing it until you find somebody who's
that
working.
might be the key. You know, a lot of times you could be familiar pressure that says you got to stay with your doctor. It's just you and your illness that doesn't want to agree with this doctor. But what you're basically saying is sometimes that person's just not the right therapist or psychiatrist for you, and you can find a better fit.
Absolutely.
And I think that's super important, again, to reiterate what Kacey just said. You know, finding be patient, because it's a process. Yeah. There's no one quick fix or quick answer to a scenario that's really an ongoing thing that has to be managed.
Yes.
And I remind everybody all the time that, you know, mental health is not something that you cure. It's always something that you manage. And to be honest, it's if I almost want to say not all of us on some level. So I feel like that, you know, it's just different levels, different experiences, different, you know, intensities. But in reality, maintaining your mental wellness is a process for us all.
Absolutely. And it's something you have to actively choose and actively work on every day.
And so give us one piece of advice that actually we can use, especially if we're going through some of those up and down cycles, that can help us stay on track or help someone else stay on track.
I think one thing that I learned after my suicide attempt is that I had to choose me. I had to continue to choose me and my well-being. I couldn't rely on other people to make me better. And so whether I'm in a really great mood or a really bad mood, or in a just like a seemingly fine mood, not up or down, it's just always checking in with myself and making sure that I'm doing the things that I have to do to be healthy. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of cliche
I have
advice,
a live question here. Someone is asking, how many therapists did you go through before you found one that matched you?
I probably went through 4. But I also have moved a lot in my life. So that has changed, and like switching jobs changes your insurance. So I have had quite a few therapists in my life. My longest relationship with a therapist is about 3 years. But it took a lot of trial and error to get there.
Okay.
Well, you know what? One of the things I appreciate is with your last statement when I asked for that one piece of advice is that you didn't put the blame somewhere out there. You took personal responsibility in that very statement. And I think that might be the key. I mean, if you want to succeed in life, in dealing with the issues that you're dealing with, the hand that you've been dealt, you know, it's up to you.
And I'm glad Kacey's here, because I'm going to use Kacey today as our beautiful example. One of the messages that I'm pounding out now in the public and in social media is the misunderstanding of what mental illness is, and people have a movie idea of what mental illness is. And a lot of the times, I think it dismisses individuality. It dismisses intelligence as if that there's some kind of other, delay. And it's not always true. I mean, most of the time I find in my world with all the people that I know, it's quite the opposite. Brilliant, accomplished in a lot of cases. And I think that that's important to see. Seeing you is important to see because you are someone who definitely, not only are you aware, not only are you proactive when it comes to dealing with your scenario, but like Dave said, to look at you and just to know your story, that this is clear, that you are everyone. So that's something that I really want to be a center focus as people look back on this show and as they're watching here now. That I think that we need to reframe what mental wellness or a difference looks like. It's just that. It's a difference.
Yeah.
It's not always so. It's not so debilitating that you can see it,
Absolutely.
coming at you.
And in closing, I will say as we wrap things up, we said when we first met Will, oh man, because we didn't know you at the time, your wife is lucky to have such a thoughtful husband as you. And now that we met you, Will.
Really, Will? Who's the lucky one?
You're
Will?
lucky to have such a wonderful, loving wife.
Actually, you're actually we would love to. We should have them on together.
Absolutely,
because
that would be amazing.
You both, to be honest, are blessed to have found each other. And I feel like that there was I always say that there's a beat that only one other person can possibly hear, and it's not a rhythm that's common. And I'm glad that you guys can hear each other's rhythm for sure, because it's pretty amazing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, you know what? Our guest has been Kacey Short. Kacey, thank you so much for taking some time to spend with us here at Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave. Next week, one of our favorites, Trusty Scribe, is coming back. So
Trusty's back.
Absolutely. Trusty, the artist.
Trusty
Artiste. So, Kacey, please come back with Will.
I would love that.
Will, I know you can
Absolutely.
hear us. Get in here. Okay, that's a little forceful. Hey, Will, come on back. Come hang out with Kacey. See you soon, okay, buddy?
Thank you so much. And thank you guys for
both.
tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.